In this video, I'm going to show you how you can create a simple AI assistant that can help you track and manage your finances. I'll guide you through how to think about the problem, turn it into simple workflows, and explain some n8n nuances along the way. Stick till the end and you will walk away with a clear, practical way to build smarter automation. Alright, here I say I spent 35k on my car loan EMI today. Right away it added this row with transaction type debit with today's date, amount, and the reason is car loan EMI. And it also sent me a message of what it added with all the details. Now I said I got 20k from my intraday trade yesterday, and it added the 20k with yesterday's date with credited transaction type. And again I got the message what's added. Now I just sent an image from my phone for some Amazon parcel, and right away the transaction is logged with the amount, the invoice ID, the date, and the reason why this invoice was purchased. I got the message of the confirmation, and not only that, the invoice is saved on my Google Drive. Now let's say I want to change my monthly budget from this 20,000 to 40,000. How I will do that? I just said update my monthly budget to 40k. I got this message updated overall monthly budget to 40k, and it's updated in the sheet here. Let's say I want to update this current month's budget from 1200 to 12k. I just texted and I got the response. The budget is also updated here with 12k. Now let's say I want to update budget for March 25. I just messaged and this is updated. So if you are setting the overall monthly budget, this will be used. If you have a specific budget for a specific month, that will be used. And why are we even storing this? Every morning it will check if your current month's budget is exceeding 90% of the set limit. If it does, it will directly send you a message on Telegram giving you a warning that you are exceeding your monthly budget, so slow down. And if I send some message that my finance manager does not know about, it will directly tell you what it can do and what it cannot do. And this is the n8n workflow that is powering everything you just saw. In the start of the video, I told you I will tell you how to approach the problem and how to convert it to a workflow. So let's just start with a simple problem. First of all, we want to record a transaction. To record the transaction, first you need to have a way to tell your agent what you want to do, what you want to record. So for that, I choose Telegram. So let's say I want to record a transaction. What I need to do is record a credit and debit. And I'll start with just recording by a message. For that, I will just build the straight line workflow. What it is doing is taking the message, giving it to our AI agent to infer what the intent is and record the transaction. And then what we can do? We can go ahead and add an extra feature of using the invoice images. For that, there is a sub branch that went ahead, got the image file you sent, added to our drive, analyzed the image. Now AI agent is going to process the content of the image and then it will record the transaction. Now, if you had noticed earlier in the sheet 2 where we had added our budget, I was also tracking the total spending of that month, whatever month you are in currently or whatever month the invoice you had sent. For that, what I'm doing, after recording the transaction, we can calculate the total of that month for which you have sent the transaction details and will update that month's transaction. Now, once you build all this, now you want to also set the budget. Now to set the budget, what I will do, I will make sure my AI agent is going to tell me if the user intend to set the budget or record the transaction. And once that is done, based on that information, I will branch out and say set the budget here. And if the intent is record the transaction, it is going to this part. AI agent will also tell us if you want to set an overall budget or a specific month budget. Based on that, we'll branch out two different sections. First, set overall budget and notify the user, or set for a specific month's budget and notify the user. If your intent does not fit into any of these categories of adding the transaction or setting the budget, we want to send a message saying we did not quite get that. After building all this, now if you realize that your Telegram bot can be accessible by public and anyone can send a message, for that we want to make sure that only your user ID is valid for this workflow or a set of user ID that you want to use. For that, before starting any of these process, if that is the case, we want to make sure we eliminate all those requests which we do not want to take. So this is how you think. You first build a simple working flow from Telegram trigger to directly passing message to your AI agent. From there, you simply add the transaction into your Google Sheet and send you a response. That's it. As you go further, you will realize that you want to deal with images. And if you want to deal with images, what you will do? You will determine if you are handling a picture or handling a text. If you're handling a picture, you go other route. Handling a text is going to the same route. And after building all these, we'll just build a schedule for every day at 9:30 a.m. to check if my current month's spending is crossing the 90% of the budget or not. If that is the case, I'll just get this message that I've spent 90% of my monthly budget. Now we are on our blank canvas, and let's go ahead and start building the entire workflow together. First of all, we'll need a Telegram trigger node. It should be on message. Now what I need is a credential for my bot. How we can get that? We just need an access token for the bot. But before that, we need to create the bot. So let's go ahead and create a bot. Just search for bot father on Telegram and you'll get this bot father bot, and just say start. And after that, you can just say help, and it will give you all the commands that are available in the bot father. What I want is create a new bot. To do that, I'll just click on this. I will just give a name for my bot, n8n finance assistant demo. Now it wants a user ID for that bot. As soon as you give a username for your bot, which needs to be unique, you will get this access token. So just copy this access token and paste it here. Save it and give it a name, test Telegram account, and save it. Now it says test Telegram account on message. Now just click here and you will be redirected to your bot. Now click on this execute step. It will start listening to the test event, and click start, and you got this message. So basically we sent a start message and we got that text. Now what do we want next? Let's just save this and go ahead. Now next, what we wanted is to only process messages from a specific user ID. For that, I'll just use an if node. Go ahead. And for value, what we want is from ID, the user ID. Okay. Now we'll just drag this from ID and make sure it's true only if the from ID is matching my user ID. Execute this step. It is matching. What if it does not match what we want? If it does not match, you want to simply send a text message. Click here, test Telegram account, chat ID, what chat ID. For that, you need to go to schema, and here from here, just drag this ID or this ID. Both are same in case of a single chat. So I'll just drag the chat ID, text. I'll just say not my type and execute. And now if you click execute here, it will not actually execute because it does not have any input. So this node is not going to execute. For this to be executed, you need some input to coming down from here. For example, if I click here, see, it did not execute. Otherwise it would have a green border on its side. To make sure it executes, I'll just simply make sure this 2, 3, 4 and execute. So now it's going to false branch. And now if I execute this, see, I got a message right away here, not my type. Also, we got this footer. To remove this footer, you can go ahead, add field, append n8n attribution, and toggle it off. And now if you will execute this, not my type, without any footer. Okay, let's go ahead, make sure it is correct. And if you execute it, it's now going to the true branch. Okay, now what happens here? Once you want to process your message, I want to make sure I am able to parse between different messages. If it is text message, I parse the text message. If it is an image file, I want to have a different route. For that, I'll just simply have a switch node, and I will want to see if the text is present or not. Let's just drag it here. If this is a string and it exists, then this is the text. And if you click here, you see one item for text is there. Now I also want to classify if I get an image. To do that, first I need to make sure my input has an image so that I know how the structure of an image input looks like. So let's go back to our Telegram. I will just simply send an image from my mobile and and execute step, unpin and test. We got this photo. So if you see, we got 1, 2, 3 and 4. There are 4 different sizes of the image. If the image is low quality, you will mostly get 3 sizes. This one is very small, this is a little bigger, and this is something that AI can actually read properly. Okay, let's pin this to test it out from image. Execute this step. Now go to switch node. Now I said I want to use the third photo, which is much clearer. So I'll just drag it and put it here. And I'll say if that string exists and rename it to has picture. And now if you execute it, I see text section has nothing, but has picture section has this output. Okay, now we have text and picture both. So what we want to do next? Since we already have the picture input ready, let's make sure we process the picture. Now all we have is the picture ID. We need to get and extract the exact file, the exact image. For that, we'll just click here and say Telegram and there will be a node called get a file. Here what we want to give is the file ID. File ID was this, the third one. Just pass it, download true, and execute. You see we got this output, and if you click view, you see this is the image that I sent. Back to list. Now what we can do, now that we have this image, what we want to do is parse this image. How we can do that? We'll just use OpenAI node, and you will find there are some image action, analyze image. For this you need to give the URL, or you can just select here, click binary file and data. See, this is giving inside data, so we are just saying the field name is going to be data. Now let's choose the model to analyze our image. Any mini model should be enough. We'll use Foro Mini. And now if I execute this, it gives us the user interface related to Telegram integration, likely a webhook setup. Yeah, quite the quality it is. But we'll be mostly sending invoice images, and for that what we'll be doing, if I change this text prompt to this, and if I send the invoice, I will always get a proper detailed invoice. LLM will always extract invoice information with invoice number, date, and total amount, with these simple rules that if it is not an invoice image, return null. So if I execute it again, it cannot infer the details, so it gave null, null, null. Cool. Now I also want to make sure that the image I sent should be uploaded to my Google Drive so that I can see it in future. For that, I'll just click here and go to Google Drive node. I want to upload a file. Now select your credentials. You can see this video to know how to create the credentials and connect it. While giving the file name, you want to make sure that you always give different file names for different invoices. To do that, we'll select expression and say, let's say invoice underscore underscore, and I will add the current date stamp. So add dollar now, this will represent the current date. Along with, I want to make sure it has a specific ISO format. So your invoice name looks something like this now. Let's say choose the folder invoices and execute this step. Now if I go back to my drive, in the invoices folder, I see this image is uploaded. Now that I have text input and image analysis coming into my workflow, what I need to do is pass these two data into a specific data structure so that AI agent will take one input, not two input. To do that, what we'll do is first click here and say merge node, append the number of input 2, add this as well here. And now if you execute this, we see that the image input is now here. What we'll do next is add a set node. Now in set node, we'll set different variables for our different type of input. So this one is called the image input. Text input is not coming into the same data structure. So let's just mock the text input by sending some text. Execute this and pin. Now I have this. I'll be easily able to run this and get one more item. Here we got text. So if I drag it here and say this message is called text input and execute this step, you see I have two things. Image input is null, text input is I got 500 today. Earlier, if I would have run it, we would have image input not null, but text input null. Now that I have input from our text and image both, it will be, one of them will be null at a given time and one of them will have a real value. So now is the time to use our AI agent. We'll select the source of the user prompt to be defined below, and how we are going to define it. We are going to say if there is an image input, then it's going to be the image input, but if it is not, we'll give this OR symbol and say text input. So you see, since image input was null, it moved to text input. If this would have some text, then that would have gotten first. Now you also want to make sure that we define some prompt on how we want the output. To do that, just add option, add a system message. No, you are not a helpful assistant. You can add this prompt. Okay, so here what I am trying to do. I'm trying to get this format of output. I want the intent. If this is a financial transaction, if it is to set budget, or the intent is not known. If this is a financial transaction, I want to make sure to have transaction type credit or debit, the amount, and the date of transaction. If there is invoice ID, then well and good. If there is any reason or source, then good. Then if your intent is to set budget, then what is the budget number? And then if you want to set the overall budget or budget for a specific month, if there is a specific month, specify that month. After doing all that, what all I just saw, the same thing I have written in the prompt here, you can go through it. Also make sure you give today to be treated as $now so that AI knows that what is the current date. Also, if you notice the date format in transaction, I want TDMMYY, but in budget, I want it to be month, comma, year. There is a reason for that, and this will be useful. You will see later. Now let's add some AI model. We'll use OpenAI chat model 4.1 mini. That's okay. After adding the chat model, let's toggle this on to require a specific output format. We defined the format here, and we'll also define the same format in our output parser. Once you toggle this on, you will see you will have this output parser option. So if you click here, you'll get these three options. Choose the structured output parser, and here you want to give some example, or you can select from here and say define using the JSON schema. You can give any example to ChatGPT and ask it to create the JSON schema. It can do that. I got my schema build, so I'll just paste it here. So what it's essentially doing is it's saying that the required properties are intent, transaction, and budget. What are the options available in intent, enum, financial transaction, set budget, unknown. And similarly in transaction, what all fields are there, in budget, what all fields are there. You can simply generate it by giving some example to ChatGPT. You also want to make sure you auto fix the format. To do that, you need to add an AI model here also. So we'll use the same model, just go and drag it here. Now our AI model is equipped with this. Now we had this text input, I got 500 today. So if I run this AI agent, it gave us this output that this is a financial transaction with transaction type credit, amount 500, date of today. Great, you're doing good so far. And by this point, you have all the input set up. You can parse image, you can parse text, you can gather the intent from the user. Now what we want to do is, based on different intent, we do different thing. We'll use the switch node and we'll pass this intent value and say if this is a financial transaction, let's call it FT. And we also want to say if the intent is set budget, then budget. If the intent is unknown, then our output name is no clue. If you execute this, you see we got in financial transaction one item. Okay, so if you have the financial transaction, we'll use the Google Sheet node now to update the Google Sheet with the transaction. Click here, append row in the sheet, okay, choose your credentials, select the document and select the sheet, the ledger one. It will fetch all the columns you have already defined. Make sure you have these columns defined in your sheet. And then transaction type, just drag transaction type here, date here, amount here, invoice ID is null, but drag it. If there is an invoice ID, it will be added here, and source here. And now if you execute this, you will see this credit of 500 is added. Next step is we want to make sure as soon as something is added here, this spent item is also increases. To do that, what we need is if drag this transaction type and match if it is equal to debit, then in this case we know that we have some spendings and we want to update our spend. Currently it's credit, so you cannot execute. While creating the workflow, you cannot always go back from the start to make sure you get transaction type debit. What we will do is we'll go back to the previous node and click on this edit option and say this is debit. This is for development purpose. I'll save it, and if I go ahead and run this again, it will go to the true branch. We just edited the output for simplicity. Now that we have a debit transaction, we want to make sure that we add in this 51,100 and not just replace it. To do that, we want to make sure we have this earlier data of 51,100. Apart from that, whenever you want to update any item in Google Sheet, you also need to make sure to find which row you want to update. So this row can be anywhere, and we'll match it with this month, comma, year. But if you notice, we have this date in this format, 3/01/2026, but here the format is January 2026. So let's first go ahead and move our date to different format. To do that, we'll just use the set node. We will drag the amount because we need the amount also, because the amount is something that we are going to update. Then drag date here And here what you need to do is remove this, simply paste this. What it is doing is there is a date time library and we are passing this date input directly and saying this is in the DDMMYY format. I want to make sure to make from this to this format. And if I execute this, I will have amount and date with me. Now that I have date and amount with me, what I want is to make sure I get the already existing spent. That was 51,100. To do that, I'll just use the Google Sheet node, get rows in the sheet, and I want to get the rows from finance chart, monthly data, and our filter is where month is equal to this date, January 2026. If I execute this, I have this data. Now there is a possibility that when you are adding any data for the first time for any month, then you will have empty row and you will not get anything. But still you want to move ahead to the next node so that you can add the non-existing month. To do that, make sure you are going to setting and toggle this on, this always output data. What happens is if there is no row, it will give you an empty array. For example, if I say not January, but March 2026 and save it. If I toggle this off and execute this step, there is no output. So it will not go to the next step. And in the next step, we want to add or update the row. So if you toggle this on, go ahead, we got an empty object. Cool. Now our last step is to make sure we update the spendings. Again, we'll use the Google Sheet node and click on append or update so that we can either add the row or we can update the already existing row. Choose your document, choose your sheet, and we want to match on the month. But how are you going to match on the month if you don't even have the month in this input? For that, we have already added the month and amount in here. So we'll go to schema. The previous to previous node has the date. I'll just drag it here. And I want to set only spend. So I'll delete the budget, global key, and global value. Now, how much did we spend? We spent this amount plus the amount that is going to come from our last input. If that is not present, we'll not use it. But let's mock it so that I can show you how you can add it. If I run this, now that I have an output, I want to make sure I add this spent number. But what happens if this spent number is not present or if it is null? We want to make sure that if it is null, we add 0 to our amount. To do that, what we'll simply do is add a bracket here, just copy this variable and say question mark this variable else 0. What it is doing is if this is a true value or if this is present, then use this, otherwise use 0. So what happened, this was present, it took 51,600 and then added 0. Let's say if it is not present, for example, if I have spends, okay, then it will not use spends or spent and then it is going to use 0. So I will only update 500. So if I correct the naming, I'll update 51,600. So if I execute this, my bad, I have to match on month and execute. This is updated. Congratulations, now you can start logging your transactions by giving any text input or giving any image input. Now let's handle case where intent is to set the budget. If you remember, while setting the budget, we also had two things. Either you can set overall budget or you can set budget for a specific month. To classify between these two, we'll again use a switch node, but we don't have an input. So I'll just simply send a message saying set my budget to 500K. I want to listen to this message as well. I'll just pin it here. You could have also edited that and sent it over. Okay, no worries. I'll just play. Here we'll get to this case only if this is set budget. But what is the scope? If scope is overall, then this, otherwise if scope is month, this output came for overall. I'll just rename it to overall, rename this to month. Execute overall and month. Now how do you set the overall budget? How Google Sheet works is you want to update a row, you want to first make sure you match for any specific key to update that data. So I'll match global key and update the global value. Our key is going to be fixed, so make sure when you create the sheet, you add this key into your global key. Now use the sheet node to update the sheet, select the doc, select the sheet. Now we're going to match on the global key. Global key is this, and the value we are going to set is for global value, and the value is going to be this amount, and execute. 500,000 is set. Let's say after recording the budget, you want to send a confirmation message. What you can do, just go ahead, copy the send message node, add here, paste, and say budget is set to this, and execute. See, I got this message. Now after adding any transaction, we also want to send the message, right? So copy this node again, paste it here, and drag from here. This was the node which was actually updating the sheet with any transaction. Here we just want to change the message with transaction added with all the details you can drag and drop. Now if you notice, when we were setting the overall budget, it's going to be same for monthly. So why not just copy this much and paste it here and drag it here. Now let's mock the input from month and try to update the keys. Here if you execute, it's going to give this output. Let's try to edit our AI agent output to month, and I'll add the month to be January 2026. Save it. And now if I run this switch, it's going to give the budget. Now if I run this node, it is going to give in the monthly section. Okay. Now if we want to match on month, and month is going to be this, and we want to update the value as well, right? We'll update the budget of that specific month to this amount and execute. Now 50,000, it's updated. Same way you can just send the message. We'll say this budget is set to this for this month, Jan 2026. Now you see why it comes in handy. It's easy to read also. Budget is set to 500,000 for January 2026. In case the intent is not specified, I also want to make sure to send a message. Just copy any Telegram node, paste it here, and drag this. And make sure you say that no intent specified. Change the message and done. Now you have built the first workflow completely. You can authenticate, you can use text, you can use images, you can find the intent, and based on the intent, you can do different things. Now we want to make sure every morning we get a notification if our spending is going more than the 90% of the set budget. To do that, simply check for the schedule trigger node and say every day at 9 a.m. execute. You got this. Now we want to get the data from our sheet for the current month's spending. So we'll use the get rows in the sheet, and from our monthly data sheet, our filter is going to be on column month. The month has the format month, comma, year. You see January 2026, it says it right here. Another reason why I preferred having the full month name and full year name. Month, and just add a comma, space, drag year. And if you execute, you got it. But if you notice, the budget is not going to be set for each month. For example, if I don't send the budget for January here, in this case, I want to use the default overall monthly budget. To do that, we want to make sure to add a filter on the global key, where global key is equals to overall monthly budget. And this is not an AND filter. This is going to be the OR filter, so that I get the rows where either of these two conditions are specified. Execute this step and you got these. Now, if you notice, row 2 is below row 3. Why this happened is because this match is from the below filter. So you also want to make sure to move this filter above the month filter so that you always get this one first. I swap the order, and if I execute, I see the 2 is on top, 3 is at the bottom. Perfect. Now if you notice here, you have 2 items. And when this happens, then any node you add here can run twice. For example, if I add a send message node, then it can run on both the input. So we want to first combine these two input. How are we going to do that? We will use the aggregate node. it aggregates all the items coming in from the previous node. You see there are two items, these two. So I just, let's say, add all item data and execute. So in one item, we have this data field, and in this, the array, all the two array items are added. And now we are not going to give two different inputs, but in one input, 2 data points. Now to find our budget and spends, we'll just use the set node to make sure we can set the specific field budget. Budget is coming from either this or this. If this is present, then this is going to get priority. To do that, we'll use this first and say, or use the global value. So now what happens if this is null or this is 0, or if this is just not present, it will take this one. And we know that this is always going to be present. If this is also 0, what will happen? You don't have any budget set. Either you can say 0, or you can make sure you add one more condition that if that is the case, you don't move ahead. Now what was our spend? Spend number is always coming from here. If this is not present, it is going to be 0. Execute this. My bad, I just used spend on the budget section. I'll use budget here and execute. Now budget is much higher. Now let's use the if node to make sure we are checking if we are spending more than our allocated budget. So if I am going to spend more than, let's say, 80% of my budget, which is going to be a boolean and is true, then I should get a notification. It's false. Let's say this is 0.01. It is true now. If that is the case, I want to send a Telegram message, send a text message. Now in this case, chat ID, you need to hard code it from chat ID that you got from earlier. At the chat ID, you are spending too much, spent this while budget was this. Again, I don't want to have the n8n attribute, just execute. You got this message right here. If you're not spending too much, you won't get any notification. So this was how you can create a simple assistant that can help you manage and track your finances. I have also provided the free template of the entire thing in the description below. You can go ahead and use it. And if you have any doubt in building it or implementing it, just let me know in the comments. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel, and I will help you stay ahead in this AI race. See you next time.